Okay, so I think there we are. I want to say welcome everybody to the second ZEXE study session. Youssef is going to be again leading this one. Yeah, and I'm excited to see what you have in store. This particular video is going to cover the sections from page 25 to page, what was it, like 40?
45, I guess.
45, okay, nice. Cool, so why don't you take it away, Youssef?
Okay, let's start. So yeah, so as you said, this is the second session. So maybe we'll start by recapitulating what we've covered in the first session. So, and then we will cover, well, the pages from 25 to 45. So
just before you start, Youssef, one quick question. Do you have notes or anything?
I have notes, but only on my paper, so I will type them down after the session, and then I will share them with you.
Sounds good. So I think what we maybe will do then is follow along with the paper if we have it, or our own notes. Okay, sounds good.
Yep. Okay, so I can share screen, and then we'll have the paper as well.
Cool.
Okay.
Oh. Is it working?
I can see.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself now.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, we will be talking about ZEXE paper. So this paper is written by people from the academics, so from UC Berkeley, Johns Hopkins University, Cornell Tech, and also from industry as well, ZEXE. So in the first session, we covered from page 1 to page 25. So we talked about the introduction, the techniques, definition of the new scheme they have proposed called DPC, decentralized private computation, and the construction of this DPC. Today we will be talking, well, we will be recapitulating a little bit what we have covered, because what we did last time was a little bit an overview of all the paper, but because these first handful pages were basically all the paper, but then the next sessions go more in details. But we haven't covered yet delegated DPC. How do you delegate the generation of the proof to some untrusted worker, and the application, and then implementation strategy? We have talked about this, but maybe not pretty much in details. So yes, so just to recapitulate, so ZEXE is about doing offline computations and upload a proof of correctness of the computation. So the proof will be a zero knowledge proof, a succinct zero knowledge proof that has a constant size and constant time verification. So they do this by introducing new cryptographic primitives called DPC, decentralized computation. And so the main point is to address two of the limitations of the blockchain we all know about, that are scalability and privacy. So the starting point of ZEXE is to extend zero cash protocol. So zero cash protocol, as implemented, for example, in Zcash, it is in production for the time being. So, but it is working only on some Bitcoin-like blockchain. So you have a coin, so you have a fungible token, a coin, and in order to publish a coin, you publish the commitment to a coin, and in order to consume the coin, you publish the serial number of a coin. So a transaction is basically a serial number of some coin or some old coins, and a commitment to new coins, and some zero knowledge proof that everything is okay, so that the serial number belongs to some old coins, so stored on the ledger, and the commitment preserve the same total value. So no coin were created from thin air. So in order to extend this in ZEXE, so a coin is now a record. So we need to do the same protocol, for example, in Ethereum, where we have multiple tokens. So we wouldn't now reason about values, but about payloads. So a coin is a record, just to establish a common language, as in the ZEXE paper. A transaction is a serial number of some older record, commitment to some new records, and zero knowledge proof that some, let's say, arbitrary function was applied to the old record to produce some new records. Fair enough. But then the problem is, if we want the functions to be user-defined, how can we preserve the privacy of those functions if those are user-defined and be permissionless still? That means that any user can choose any older record and apply their own user-defined functions on them to create those new records. So if we can do this, the problem now is how can we isolate malicious functions from honest functions? We can add a zero knowledge proof that asserts that the same function is being used without saying what is this same function. But this is basically boils down to having a zero cache protocol for every token. So this has a lot of limitations, because basically what you are doing is you are doing a zero cache for every token, and you cannot benefit from interoperability. So, for example, you cannot do cross token swap, for example. So, so in the paper they established a common language. So a record, we've seen what is a record. The solution to this problem we have evoked is to have to incorporate those functions, those user-defined functions, into the data payload. So you will have a universal function on the ledger and a user-defined function incorporated within the data payload. So, so as a common language, we need a nano kernel, a records nano kernel. So this is some sort of a OS, an execution environment, operation system, where we can process different transactions, different records without violating the privacy of each. So the record will be the data payload as before, but in addition to this, a birth predicate, so to create the record, a death predicate to consume the record, what they call transaction memorandum, which is the public input to those predicates, and auxiliary inputs, which are the private input to those predicates. So this is what we've seen so far. A record is this set, and after this, we've talked about the challenges to implement this, and how do you do this this universal function and user-defined function. So basically, the solution in ZEXE was to do a proof of a proof. So we've seen in the literature recursive snarks. So those zero knowledge we are talking about now is, so the choice in ZEXE was GM17. So those are pairing-based pre-processing ZK snarks. And we want to do recursive snarks. We want to do a proof of a proof. So there has been a lot of research into this. The paper in 2015, Scalable Zero Knowledge, introduced a new way to do this with cycles of pairing-friendly elliptic curves, because typically, as we said, the problem is more about implementation, because when you generate a proof, you generate points on the elliptic curve. So those points belong to some subgroup, let's say, of order n. So you do some computations of arithmetic n. But then when you do verification, those are pairing-based ZK snarks. So the verification is basically pairing computation. And pairings are bilinear maps that takes 2 points from two groups that have the same order on an elliptic curve and outputs a point, outputs an element on some finite field. Okay, so this finite field has an order equal to the size field of the elliptic curve, not the subgroup order, which are different. So we have an arithmetic mismatch, because we generate the proof on an arithmetic, let's say, of order n, and we verify the proof of an arithmetic, let's say, of order, an extension of order p. So the problem, we have a mismatch. So there are many attempts. So the first attempt is to have an elliptic curve that have n equal to p. So this will be perfect, but unfortunately, there are no pairing friendly elliptic curves. So an elliptic curve that can do pairings that has this criteria, because typically in a pairing, I'm not sure if you want to talk more in details about those pairings, or we can just move to other parts in ZEXE.
I mean,
Well,
it's almost getting into the section 7 of the implementation strategy, because, you know, again, it gets broken down there, but I think we covered it pretty well the first time.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
I mean, was there anything else you wanted to cover from the first session? Because maybe now would be a good time to ask what questions people had from reading this second part of the paper, and then we could start digging into each of those.
Okay, so that sounds good to me.
Cool. So then, yeah, we could open it up to the group who's on the call today. You know, how is it that you found this second section of the paper? Did you have some open questions or some particular points that you wanted to cover today? I know at least for me, I wanted to address a little bit about this delegation to the untrusted worker, where, yes, you know, so of course it was one of the it was the biggest chunk of this part, at least for me. But when the goal is to use this, you know, randomized address, this randomized public key, you know, I'm also starting to wonder, unless these workers are operated in a benevolent model, you know, how, like, where it's free infrastructure, how is it that an untrusted worker is going to authorize someone to ask it to do any work? Or you're going to need to know, like, a trusted pool of workers when you're on your mobile device and you want to, yeah, delegate that work. That seemed to be, you know, it's like really good privacy preserving, but maybe that's just another layer, because it seems like a mismatch unless you're just expecting that infrastructure to be available.
Okay. Well, just
maybe before you, I think the idea here is if there's any other points, because I think you're gonna go through it, right? Like Youssef, we're gonna actually like go through a little bit more detail the section. I think that's what you had prepared.
Yes, exactly. What I wanted is just to recapitulate what we've seen, cool. And then I just ask if you want to talk a little bit more about pairing-based cryptography, even if it is not like the main topic in ZEXE.
Yeah, so I think that the idea that Matthew had here is that if there are any other points that have come up, maybe it's good for us to hear about it before, and then while you're going through it, you can sort of highlight where that is potentially solved. But so were there any other questions? Or Alistair, did you have anything? I'm curious. Hi, Alistair, by the way.
Oh, hi, yes. I'm still reading this section of the paper.
I see.
Famous last words.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess if there are any others, like if there's anything that comes up as we're going through it, I think it would be good. I think we didn't really say this last time, but we started to do it anyway. But we did, like, a few of us jumped in when there was like these parts that got a little fuzzy, and I think that we should feel kind of open to do that again this time. So just, yeah. So Youssef, I think if there aren't any other questions, go ahead.
Okay, so just to put a context into this delegated DPC, so their solution in ZEXE is to do a proof of a proof. So so you have like a universal function, and then you have user-defined functions incorporated within data, and you need to do a proof of a proof. So you do your zero-knowledge proof of chain, and then you do another proof that proves your proof, the correctness of verification, and you upload this second proof into the ledger. So there are other challenges. We've talked about how you can do recursive snarks and stuff. But the problem is, if you want to generate zero-knowledge proofs, so you have weak devices. So so if you are familiar with snarks, for example, so whether Pinocchio, GM17, or Gross16, or Sonic, to generate a proof, The bottleneck in the generation is the multi-exponentiation. So you have a set of witnesses, you have a set of evaluated polynomials in some secret points committed to some elliptic curve. So basically points on the elliptic curve, witnesses, and then you need to compute. So if you have witnesses W sub I and you have point A sub I, you need to compute the sum Wi times A sub I. So there are like, we do not do it the naive way, the straightforward way, but there are algorithms to do this, like Bose-Koster or Pippenger as implemented in Zcash after sampling activation. So, but the bottleneck still is the generation of the proof because of this multi-exponentiation. So what we want to do here is this DPC, decentralized private computation scheme. We want to delegate the generation of the proof to some third party, to some worker. But the problem here the naive approach will be you give the worker all the information to generate the proof on your behalf. But you do not want to do this because all this information includes also your secret key, because the serial number is somewhat a function of your secret key. So you do not want to do this. Another approach will be secure delegation. But for example, it is always the same idea wherever the protocol is. When you do computations with your secret info, and then you want to delegate this computation to some third party without giving them the permission to spend on your behalf, for example, the idea is, well, intuitively is maybe to have some ephemeral keys, ephemeral secret keys. So, for example, a similar problem is in Monero blockchain, where you have confidential transactions, but then in order to know if the transaction is intended to you, you need to scan all the transactions, but you want to delegate this scan process to a third party. But in order to scan, you need to give them your secret key, but you do not want to give them your secret key. So you create an ephemeral key, or what they did is you create two sets of keys, so some viewing keys and some spending keys. So this is a little bit the same idea, but this viewing key is derived from the spending key. So the solution in ZEXE is to sign the transaction. So you give the information to the serial number, for example. You give all the information to the trusted worker to generate the proof, and then he gives you the proof. Of course, you verify the proof, but how can you be sure that he doesn't spend other records on your behalf without your permission? So you sign those proofs. So the verification of a transaction before was only the verification of the zero knowledge proofs, so that the same total value is preserved, that those all the record commitments, serial numbers do not exist, those commitments are well formed, and that you verify the Merkle tree path, etc. Now, in addition to this, you do all of this, but then you verify also the signature. But this is like somewhat a simplistic solution, because if you sign the proof and then all the nodes on the ledger verify that you indeed signed the proof. So this is basically a signature scam where you sign with your private key and everyone verifies with your public key. But the problem is it violates privacy, because, well, it violates the linkability, because you will always verify with the same public key. So here is the idea of randomizing keys. So instead of having like ephemeral keys, we have some sort of ephemeral keys, but in another way. So you sign with randomized keys. So now the serial number, so if we've covered this before, the serial number is some function of some nodes, so some pseudo-random function. Now the signature will, yeah, if we see, for example, those randomizable signatures. So what we want to them to achieve is, so you have a public key, you derive from this public key another public key that you cannot link it back to the original one, and the same way you have a signature, you cannot link it back to the original signature. So this is what we call the unlinkability. So given a public key and the derived public key, you cannot link them back. And existential unforgeability. So this is like some strong notion of unforgeability. Unforgeability is required in all the signature schemes where you cannot forge under some public key a signature, but now you cannot forge under a public key or any randomized public key, any derived public key cannot forge the signature. And it is injective, mathematically speaking. The randomization is injective, which means that computationally you cannot find collusion. If you have the same public key and you derive two randomized public keys giving two different salts, two different random numbers, you cannot find the same derived public key. So it is only injective, right? So you cannot find collusions. So why we do this? So a serial number now will be a public key, so a randomized public key, and the random, the salt used, will be this pseudo-random function, so the old serial number. And the user will sign the proof and randomize the signature. So now the simplistic solution was only to sign the transactions and then sign the transactions and verify them with the same public key. So this violates the unlinkability. Now he will sign them with a randomized public key, so it will output a randomized signature, so you cannot link them back. So, but then the question is, yeah, everyone can verify the proof, but how can you prevent double spending? Well, these randomized signatures are deterministic, and we said that they are injective. So those public keys, those public keys, those derived public keys, those randomized public keys will be different if the random is every time different. So, and basically the serial number is this randomized public key. So it is deterministically, in a deterministic way, we are sure that there are no double spending. So this is what they explain in section 5, and then an extension of this section 5 is well 5.4, where this is now implemented, but it is like an idea. You can do threshold signatures or blind signatures, or threshold transactions or blind transactions. That boils down to using threshold signatures or blind signatures. The idea is in threshold where you have a pool of people that require a worker to generate the proof on their behalf, and then he generates the proof, give them the proof, and they push the proof to the transaction with their signature. Now, if you have a pool of people, you can say, well, I have a pool of 5 people, but I only need 3 people to do this, to sign. So you can do this, or you can, for example, sign on some blinded proof. You do not know the content. It depends on the use case. So I don't remember what use case they proposed, but in threshold, it is always a good idea to split the security amongst many custodians. So if you want to understand this more, how it works, we have to go back to go to the appendix. Was it 8? Yeah. Well, I don't find the appendix, but the idea they use small signatures. So if you are familiar with small signature,
I think you're looking for page 51. It's this one, E1.
This one, okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is. It is Appendix B. So, so there are many papers that do randomizable signatures. They have chosen to modify a little bit Schnorr signatures. So I think you know what are Schnorr signatures. They are like ECDSA signatures, but everyone is using ECDSA because Schnorr, unfortunately, were patented, but now they are free from patent. But there is a BIP, a Bitcoin improvement proposal, to use Schnorr signatures instead of ECDSA signatures for many reasons. Because well, the security proof of ECDSA is not very clear, because you need to link X coordinates of points with points, and Schnorr signature is pretty much straightforward, and the security proof is clear. And yeah, you can do a nice stuff with Schnorr signatures. For example, you can do natively multi-signatures. So this is why I think for many reasons they've chosen Schnorr signatures. The only modifications they've done is well, this randomization is basically a KDF, a key derivation function. So there are standards to do KDF. You have a public key, and you want to create another public key that is linked to your public key, given some random. So the idea is a public key is a point on the elliptic curve in Schnorr signature. So you have a secret key, which is a random point, an integer. Sorry, not a point, an integer. And this integer times the generator point of the elliptic curve is your public point, is your public key, which is a point on the elliptic curve. Now what you do is you generate another point that is some salt times the generator point, and the derived key will be the addition of the public key, your public key, and this random key, random point you have generated, which is the random integer times the generator. So I'm talking in terms of addition and multiplication because I'm talking about the group of elliptic curve. But if you want to be more generic, so yeah, it will be exponentiation and multiplication. Addition, you substitute the addition by multiplication, and the multiplication by exponentiation. But I prefer to look at them like in terms of elliptic curve, even if it is a little bit more specific. So this is how you randomize a public key, and how you randomize the signature. You have to look at how the Schnorr signatures are computed. So the Schnorr signature is basically this. So is the screen sharing still working? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So so the signature is this. So you have your public key. So you have the message. So you create. So you take an integer, a random integer. You create. So let's say the commitment of this integer, so g to the power k, or k times the generator point of the elliptic curve, and RH is a hash function, a collision hash function. So you hash the message concatenated with the R you computed here, and the signature will be this random integer minus x, which is your secret key, times this hash, and the output will be S and E. And to verify it, it is pretty much straightforward. So you need only to compute this RV, which is you commit this first part of the secret key to the generator point, and you use the public key power this second point, and you verify after hashing it that it is equal actually to E. So, and in order to make it compatible with the randomization, so as we said, the randomization of the public key is here. So you just, well, it is here in the paper, it is in terms of multiplication. So I will just stick with it. So you have a random point, you have a random integer, you commit it to a random to the elliptic curve, and you do the multiplication. So this is basically a public key, and you multiply it with your public key. So and the randomization of the signature is minus E times R. So you can do the computation with a pen and paper. It is very easy to verify. It is minus here in order to, so that the verification is always correct given this randomized public key and this randomized signature. So whether you are verifying it for the same message, so whether you are verifying it with your public key and signature or the randomized public key or signatures, it is always the same verification. And those terms you have added here and here, they cancel out each other in the verification. So this is how they do the delegated part. So it is important if you are running a weak device and you do not want to do the proof generation because it is costly. So you can delegate this to some trusted worker. But then, since we are talking about privacy, you do not want this trusted worker to spend on your behalf, but only to generate a proof. Because if you give him all the information to generate a proof, so he can generate another proof that spend other records without your permission. So the idea is rather simple. The implementation, well, it doesn't use like novel cryptography, so small signatures and randomizable signatures. We know how to do them, but the use case is pretty interesting. And the idea is always the same. If you want to delegate some process that requires some private input, whether you do some ephemeral keys or you sign after the third party that have done the work. So
one question.
Yeah, sure.
At least for me, that's randomizable signatures or randomizable addresses. That was something new for me. I hadn't come across that before. Do you know of other places where that's used or where I could go looking for more stuff like that? Because I found that, I found that new and also quite interesting. So in case you've seen it before.
Yes, I've seen it before, and in the paper they have mentioned some works that do randomizable signatures.
There's a link to the ZEXE specification.
Yes, in ZEXE specification as well. It is used in ZEXE specification as well. Many ideas from ZEXE paper are actually in ZEXE specification.
Yeah, and a bunch of the links for this has been deployed was related to the sapling update from Zcash, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And by the way, Shenbo is one of the main authors. So.
Although I can say this, but I don't know if you guys heard the podcast episode we did with Sean, but he was he very much downplayed his role in this paper. So he said that it was more like the work that he had been doing on sapling became very useful. So a lot of it was used in it, but he wasn't necessarily part of the construction of this. So yeah, I don't know if he's just being humble, because he's pretty humble, but yeah. So that would be the relation. But is there anything else? I think that's actually a really good question, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out just. So we trust the untrusted worker with everything.
I don't know. Maybe if anybody else on the call has heard about this. I mean, it's more a question out to the group because.
Also, by the way, Matthew, can you hear Alistair?
Can you?
I can hear him cough from time to time. Unfortunately,
that wasn't him. I don't think that's him. He say something, Alistair.
Is this me? Can you hear me?
Because he joined after me.
Yeah. I think you have to join again because he was just answering that, and I could hear you guys. Okay. Matthew will be back. He's having some weird sound things. But anyway, Alistair, what were you just saying?
So yeah, this randomizing thing is definitely interesting. But what I'm interested in here is so we trust the untrusted worker with everything apart from our private key?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
right.
This private key that allows him to spend on your behalf.
So he knows all the secrets, just not how to spend this token.
Yes. But every time he wants to generate a proof, it will be with some new serial numbers, because serial numbers are being those randomized public keys.
Sure.
Matthew, are you all good now? You can hear
I'm
everybody.
better. I'm sorry if I talked over you, Alistair. I have a funny browser bug.
That's fine.
I think we figured it out. All right, continue then, Yusuf.
Okay, so yeah, they do this with yeah, just for Matthews. So this is a link for one of the randomizable signatures that are not Schnorr signatures, for example. I think it is, yeah, this one. It is a paper from 16. Okay, so yep.
Yeah, just so because this, I need to understand a little bit more about the mechanism there, because as you've said, you know, the serial number for the records that we're creating is being derived out of the key pairing. So when we're randomizing, still that's going to be verifiable. But then I had also kind of reread my notes from the first part of the paper where it wasn't clear to me if this was meant to be a Bitcoin style setup where addresses are meant to be disposable and used only once. And then when I read, you know, how how this randomization is happening, it was unclear if that's meant to be you have kind of, you know, an address that's long living, and so you're possibly doing, you know, many rounds of transactions and you're delegating it. So I don't know if I don't know if that's correct or not. Like I still had a big question mark on top of that, where if it was only so that you can do delegation, or if it's because the addresses are going to be long lived for you.
I think it is only to do delegation, because the public key is called in the paper P sub sig, a public key only for signature, and the idea is you sign with a secret key that the worker doesn't know. So obviously when you give him the information, so he has all the information, but you have to create another pair of keys to sign that he doesn't know. And in order to address this linkability problem, you do the randomization so that every time it will be another pair of keys, another signature.
So the signature is the signature which verifies that you had the previous token.
The signature is like independent from the protocol. You do the protocol as in the plain DPC, as in the plain decentralized private computation. But once the worker have created the proof, you just sign it with a key. So you can do it with a new key. But the problem is if you sign it every time with the same key, so every time everyone will verify it with the same public key. So people can link on the ledger that this function belongs to this one and this one to this one.
Sure. So where does this PPSig come from? I can't see in the algorithm exactly what's in it.
Where is it?
I can't see in the specification exactly what's in this PPSig, which makes it a bit tricky to work out.
Can you point out a page number, please?
Where the PPSig appear? Well, and it certainly appears in
PPSig. PPSig is public information.
Yes.
So
which public information, and what determines it?
Okay. So what they wanted to do in the paper is to propose a scheme randomizable signature that is generic. So generic. So when you define a signature, you need to define a signature protocol. You need to define those steps that are initialization, key generation, sign function, and verify function. So in the initialization, so for example, if we take the specific example of Schnorr signatures, so this PPSig will be the generator point on the elliptic curve. So the generator point of the elliptic curve, G. So we are working on the same elliptic curve. So the elliptic curve, we will have, for example, as well, the hash function. So we have to agree upon the hash function. So this PPSig is just those public informations in order to do the verification, do the generation.
Right.
The verification.
It's the thing that everyone uses. It's the thing we get from the setup that everyone has. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Nice.
So okay. Yeah. So the thing I'm trying to work out here is where when we sign this, does the thing we're signing? Why is it that only the person who actually owns the thing can sign it?
Sorry, say that again.
So the setup here is that the person who's delegating to the DPC, who gives all the information for this proof, he's the only person that can sign it, and that means it must contain something.
It must contain the serial number. So, but the problem is it is on the ledger. On the ledger, we have an additional verification. So the additional verification is the verification of the signature. So even if the worker puts on the blockchain a proof that he has spent some older records on the behalf of another one, the ledger wouldn't accept the proof unless he verifies the signature. And the signature cannot be forged by the worker because he doesn't have the secret key of this pair key that is called PSIG and PSIG, the public key signature and the underlying secret key.
Yeah, he doesn't have this SK sig, I, right? But that's
yeah.
But what is it that this is verified against?
Well, it is just a verification. It is just a signature verification. When you sign some content, some message, you need the message and the public key, and you just verify that this message were signed by this public key. In our scheme, the message will be the proof itself. So you will sign the proof with your secret key.
Right, but it has to be the case that only you can sign this proof for it to be verifiable.
Yes, and you are the only one to have the secret key.
And that's because
all the information are available except of the secret key, and the public key is also available. When you consume when you consume your record, you reveal the serial number, and the serial number is is actually the public key, the randomized public key. So everyone has this randomized public key to verify the signature.
Okay.
So before, the serial number was just a pseudo-random function of summons. Now it is actually a public key. So you have a serial number and you verify the proof against this serial number. So the idea is that given, for example, if we talk in terms of Ethereum, the function in Ethereum that verifies the signature is it computes a function that it computes a public key, and you verify the equality. So this will be the same. The verification is computing some public key, and then you verify it against the serial number that is actually this public key that signed the message, which is the proof. I'm not sure if I am clear, but anyway, the signature is always a message and the public key. This time, the message is the proof, and the public key is the serial number of the record being consumed.
Yeah. I mean, I have a similar question. This is why I'm curious about this mechanism of randomizing an address. Because I guess we're looking at page 27, figure 10, it gives the short version of it. And then in the appendix B, it kind of opens it up larger, so we have our public parameter SIG coming in with the transaction and the SNI and either the witness, or either the ZEXE or the proof, along with the signature. But when we randomize, we've actually changed that signature. So we got like the prime of that, but also the PK has changed for when we go into, I guess this is shown better in the appendix B. Where was that? On figure 21 on page 52. Because I guess there we have the public parameter of the SIG and we have the PK SIG, but that's the randomized one, and so is that and we have a message, but then we also have the signature, and that would also be the signature prime, correct? Is that how it's, is that correct? Is that how it's balancing, like that PK sig and the signature? I forget my Greek letters today. Is that, I don't know, is that the correct flow, or have I made a mistake there?
Yeah, the whole point is given a public key, so psig and the signature, you verify a message.
Right.
And with the same message, if you derive the signature and you derive the public key with the same random, you can still verify the same message. So you derive the signature, you derive the public key, you still can verify, because in the derivation process, in the randomization process, those elements you have added, they cancel out each other in the verification. And in ZEXE, so the public key, so you have a public key, and
Yep.
you randomize it, and when you randomize it, you have a new public key, and this is the serial number. This is the serial number you push. And when you sign the proof, you sign it with this randomized signature. So you sign it with the secret key that is linked to the serial number. So everyone
Right.
can verify with the serial number, because when you consume a record, you publish the serial number. So
Right, because we did the randomization before we sent some data off to this, to this delegated worker, and then when we get that back, we sign the whole thing with the randomized private key that was associated to that public key that we sent off, right?
yes, exactly.
Okay.
But if you technically, the secret key will be the same, whether it is a random key, whether it is a public key or a randomized public key. It will be the secret key will be your secret key plus this random element you added.
Yep, fair.
Because if you see in 52 figure 21, so here so the public key sig is actually J to X. So this is J to X plus R sub sig. So the secret key will be R sig plus X. So you just factor with G.
Yep. Okay.
It makes sense to me
now. Yeah. So any more questions, maybe?
Looks good.
Okay. So yes, so what we haven't covered yet is maybe the applications, I guess. Yeah. Section.
Six.
Yeah, section 6. So what I wanted to do when recapitulating is to talk about section 7 before, because this is basically, we covered this in the previous session, and so do you want to do it before the applications, or maybe we do the applications before? Because the application is just giving examples for those birth predicates and death predicates to make them more concrete.
I think we're sort of running out of time, so I wonder if we may have to break at some point and basically just hold this for the next one. What do you think? I mean, what do you think would be really good as prep for the next one? Like, you think we should do 7 first, but do you think we actually have enough time to do 7?
I think that at this time we've covered all the paper, because we've been going back and forth in appendix and all the sections, and even in the previous session, even the first handful pages were an overview, but we've been digging more in details. So what we haven't done just yet is the applications. So maybe because we are running out of time, we will talk about the implementation strategy because we have seen this before, so it will be easier to go on.
And then I guess for the next session, we can do the applications.
That sounds good to me. What about you?
Let's do that. And then let's wrap pretty soon because I'm going to actually have to jump. And I don't know about the folks, but.
Okay, sounds good. So just, okay, so the implementation strategy. So as we said, the universality is expensive because, we said that we incorporate those user-defined functions into data payload, and we will have a proof of a proof. So we will create proofs offline for your predicate, and then you create a proof that verify those proofs, and you upload only this second proof into the blockchain. So you will have like only some universal circuit that verifies a proof of a proof. So it will be always the same thing. But the problem is universality is expensive. So the solution is to do recursive SMARCs, recursive proof verification. But recursion is expensive because as far as I know empirically, the only practical way to do this is using cycles of pairing-friendly elliptic curves. Because as we said, we do not have an elliptic curve that have a subgroup order equal to the field size. So we create two elliptic curves, one that has a subgroup order, let's say n, and the other one has a size field p, and then you create an elliptic curve that n is equal in a way that n is equal to p. So there is no arithmetic mismatch. But the only cycle we know is the one used in, so the one introduced in 2015 in the scalable zero knowledge proofs, and it is being used for the time being in CODA protocol to do constant size blockchain. So those sets of elliptic curves are called MNT elliptic curves. So those were like the first family of pairing-based elliptic curve. But the problem, the drawback is that they have an embedded degree equal to 4 of 6, or in other words, the security, if you want a good security, if you want 128-bit security, the elliptic curves are not quite efficient because the parameter will have to increase in order to meet this security. So ZEXE guys said that in our scheme, in our DPC scheme, we need merely a proof of a proof. So we do not need an infinite recursion. Let's say we need only a bounded recursion. So they come up with, so because recursion is expensive, so the solution is tailored curves. So they come up with a new set of elliptic curves that do this proof of proof. So instead of having a cycle, so a cycle where you can roll those elliptic curves many times as you want, you just need to do a chain. So just create an elliptic curve on top of the first one, and that's it. So the first idea would be, well, let's take the elliptic curve that is used in Ethereum, since we are doing offline computations for Ethereum like blockchains. Let's take this elliptic curve. So this is alt BN128. So BN128. But so I think they have constructed an elliptic curve. It's not on the paper, but you can do this with the same method. I've constructed this embedded elliptic curve over BN myself, but the problem is it turns out that is not quite efficient because in SMARCs you need to do polynomial computations, polynomial interpolation, and so on. And to do this, you need fast Fourier transform. So you need the order to be divisible by a large power of 2. But unfortunately, the field size of this BN curve, that will be the subgroup order of the next curve we are looking for, it is not divisible. Well, it is not divisible by a large power of 2, so it's not quite efficient. So what they did is they created a new elliptic curve, BLS, that is highly two-adic, divisible by a large power of 2 with respect to both the field size and the subgroup, because the field size will be the subgroup of the next curve. So they created a first curve curve a second curve, so via the Cox-Pinch method. But the Cox-Pinch method is costly because the size of the elliptic curve grows, so by a factor of 2. So if you need an elliptic curve to have a security level 128, you need a size field of 256. But then the curve that you will generate will be ×2, and the other one ×2. So it goes. So we have a good curve and a bad curve in terms of efficiency. So what they do is they split relations across the curve. So let's do not forget that we're doing all of this for privacy issues. So those predicates that are related to privacy are verified in the bad curve, but all other checks that do not relate to privacy are verified on the good curve. So this is one of their solutions. But then the problem is NP relations have many checks. So well, yeah. So the checks we are talking about are commitments and hashes. So this is like work from Daira output in Zcash. So for example, SHA-256 has a huge circuit. So what they did is they come up with those Pedersen hashes. So they constructed another elliptic curve over their elliptic curve in the shape of Edwards. So it is a special elliptic curve, a special shape, very quick, and that has complete formula. So it is really resistant to side channel attack, for instance. This is another subject, but the idea is they have two curves, so a good curve and a bad curve, and on top of those curves, they have constructed two Edwards curves. So just like Daira constructed the Jub curve, if you have heard about, so to do Pedersen hashes. So we have 4 curves, and then the last problem in this section is sharing information between NP relations is costly. So yeah, so instead of sharing the information, they share the hashes, and yeah, and the hashes they use Blake 2. I think Blake 2 is used in Snarky. So I think I came across in the GitHub of Snarky of Blake 2, and the Blake 2 is also a concurrent to Pedersen hash to replace, for example, SHA-256. So this section is quite good because when you go through it, you have a problem and then a solution, a problem and then a solution.
It seems we just lost you, Youssef.
Well, we got to the end of the solution, so you know.
I'm sorry. Did I? I'm sorry. Did I?
It was kind of perfect timing.
Yeah.
And I'm out.
Yeah. No, it's. I'm sorry.
Well, actually, yeah. I don't know if you feel like are you not quite done yet? Because actually, I'm trying to think. Did you just finish solution 5?
Sorry, say that again.
Maybe okay, just finish off. I think we just have to wrap. We have to wrap now.
I think I have finished the section 7, so we still have to talk about the application.
Okay, cool. Sorry to rush you there at the end because I know that there was. I'm sure that there could have been like questions and stuff. So I definitely want to like hold this until the next one. Oh yeah, there's Matthew again, so you could actually hear him. So we were just saying we're probably going to wrap up now.
Okay.
I guess it's a shame because usually we'd love to like actually pool together some questions or something, but I have a feeling what might happen with this particular paper is that at the very end, after we've gone through like a number of these sessions, I think if we still have open questions, we should bring them to the group and see if any of the authors who might be in there could help us out. But I think for now, I kind of just want to say like thanks again, Youssef, for going through all this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, and just a disclaimer, please. If I've done any mistakes, so those are my mistakes. Maybe I haven't understand fully the paper, so do not attribute to them to the authors.
Cool, but I mean, I think this is a study club, so I think the idea here is that like we're all trying to learn together. Yeah, so I just want to say thanks again to everybody. The video should be up pretty soon, and Youssef, and actually we should probably coordinate for the next one. I think for sure for the next one, like I'm really excited to touch the use cases and try to understand how this stuff could all be actually used, and how it's different maybe than the other solutions out there. So
this is the exciting bit, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we'll have to hold on for the next one.
We can put in the material the video. There is a video about the one of the use cases, DEX use case.
So why don't we do that? We can actually add a little bit more to it, and do a session on that, plus maybe some other parts of the paper, if it makes sense. Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. I don't know when that's going to be exactly. All right.
All right.
See you soon.
Cheers.